Okay, I think I figured it out. Yay! I think so. All right, I'm going to wait for everybody to get back on here. I'm going to try this again. Let's see if more people will join me. Yay, I've got one person. Hopefully, we can do that again. All right, I see people coming back on. I think I figured it out. Yay. So, Laura Davis, can you tell me that it is public now? You can just send me a thumbs up. It should be now. I'm hoping it is, so we can get this thing shared. Oh, awesome. Thanks, Stephen. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, since I prayed in the first video, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I want to say that I am coming live to you tonight for quarantine quiet time at 5. And I am currently sitting in the sanctuary at Antioch Baptist Church. And so this has been an amazing journey this evening trying to get this going. You guys know that I am not technology savvy, but I think I'm getting better at it. So maybe quarantine's making me better. Anyway, so let's get started. My name is Amber Kidd. I am a daughter of the highest King. Not only do I believe in God, I am proof that He exists. I'm in recovery for drugs. I still struggle with anger, with patience, tobacco, and among many other things. Today, though, I am a little over 4 years clean and sober from drugs. I was born and raised in West Virginia. I had a pretty good childhood. Growing up, we were in church whenever the doors were open. Life was pretty good when I was a kid. It was in my teenage years that I started taking a turn for the worst. At the beginning of my teenage years, when I was 12, I was saved and baptized. And I really didn't know what that meant. I had no idea. I just kind of basically followed. I followed what everybody else was doing in the church, but I had no idea what it meant. And so to say that I was really living for the Lord, probably not, because I didn't understand His word and I didn't understand the full detail of what that meant to live for the Lord. So in my early years of being a teenager, I started experimenting with weed and alcohol, and I pretty much overnight became the life of the party. And so then when I was 17, I had a horrible trauma that happened to me, and that just totally sent me spiraling out of control. And it was like I went into my adult years just experimenting with anything and everything I could get my hands on. And I learned at a really young age how to bury pain and hurt with substance, with any kind of substance. Going into my adult life, I put all my focus in making money and being the life of the party. That was my focus. And then I became pregnant at the age of 20, and 4 days shy of my 21st birthday, I gave birth to my oldest son, Clay. And I wasn't partying as much in this season of life. I really my whole world was about Clay. And I just cherished and loved him, and he was just a very beautiful little baby, and he was my whole world. And so shortly after that, I got married to his dad. We had our second child, and her name is Sierra. And again, life was just all about the children, and I just kept my focus on my babies. But no matter what I did, no matter how hard I tried, I kept trying to feel a void that wasn't there in my heart. I was never happy. I could never be content. And life just really was dark for me in that era. And my marriage ended in divorce. But I still had two beautiful children, and I had to support them, and they were, my responsibility. I was still their mom, and so, I had to keep a steady head, if that made sense. So I had convinced myself that when they were with their dad, I could do whatever I wanted to. That was my time. That was my break. And during this time, I would drink a lot, party a lot, and I was still being responsible because, my kids wasn't around. So I had really convinced myself that I was still a great mom and, had it all together. That's what I convinced myself. Eventually, the drinking just really wasn't enough for me. It never was. And I would soon after my divorce meet my addiction. I was introduced to this addiction, prescription drugs, and opioids. And they were really cool at the time, I thought, because they were legal. I could walk into a doctor and get them, and nothing was ever said. And you have to understand that during this time, I was coming up in the dead center middle of the opioid epidemic that happened in West Virginia. And it didn't take long before I was addicted to these pills. I mean, it was almost immediately. And so I still, I just didn't think that there was a problem with them, though, because the doctor gave them to me. So I thought, I can use these however I want to. Doesn't matter. But, in this really dark time and all of that, as I look back, it amazes me how God shows up when you least expect it. One day I was in West Virginia and I met this really good-looking guy, really cute, and we just hit it off, and we had an immediate connection. He made me feel very safe for the very first time ever, and I really truly believe to this day that God sent him to me to rescue me and to guide me in a new way of living and in a new way of doing things. His name was Jared, and he was from Virginia. And about 10 years ago, I moved here to be with him, and we started a life together. Now, our relationship took a lot of work, and I mean a lot of work. We did everything backwards, and it was good. We had a good relationship, but then there were times where it was just really bad. But we were really good at sweeping things under the rug and really bad at communicating. And so, but anyways, the partying didn't stop just yet. We put partying on a back burner I was here about 2 years, and I became pregnant with a third baby, and her name is Riley. And we put partying on a back burner for a bit to have her, and life had all of a sudden became really busy. The focus was on children again and doing things with them. I remember, like I said, we had put partying on a back burner, so we only drank every once in a while. We would hold everything in. Me and Jared, we would hold everything in that made us mad at each other. And as soon as we drank, it was like a bomb went off. Literally. I mean, it was just a fight every single time. And so, just time keeps moving. And I remember this one evening, though, we were invited to a graduation party. And this is probably, out of all the parties that I have attended, this is the most important one in my life. This is been the most important party that I attended, because you're getting ready to find out. One of my friends, she is an incredible lady, an amazing lady, and her name is Jenny Faulkner. And that night we were sitting around a bonfire, and we were just talking about life, and one thing led to another, and she got on this conversation about this program that her church was offering called Celebrate Recovery. She invited me to come, and, I was hesitant. I was really, really hesitant, because I was extremely mad at God. There were some horrible things that happened to me in my life, and I just felt like it was God's fault. I felt like God could have stopped those horrible things if he wanted to, and he didn't. And so I felt like, that was why I was mad at God, and I was mad at him for a really long time, and wasted a lot of time, honestly, being mad at him. And so she told me that if I felt uncomfortable, which I did, that she would go with me. So, when I went to that church for the very first time, I really hadn't been back to church. I was not one that went to church. I didn't even go on Easter. And when I went the very first time, I literally creeped into that building like it was going to cave in. People say, I can't go to church because lightning will strike me, and that was me. I was one of those people, and I couldn't go into that church, and then I fought myself, and finally I did walk in, but I creeped in there as if the church was going to cave in. But I'm happy to tell you that church didn't cave in. That church is Effort Baptist Church up on 53. And I went to this meeting with her the very next week, and I just, I was in a point in my life where things were pretty good, and so I didn't really have any major problems. So I thought. I was literally sitting around in those rooms, and I was looking at people, and I was listening to people, and I thought, I don't have any of these problems. I am, I don't even know what I'm doing here. Well, let me just tell you that denial is a real thing, because that was denial. I started working the 12 steps. I started a step study there. And you see, I had gotten my PhD in covering up things, so uncovering them was insanely difficult. And during this time of working these steps in the step study, I had to uncover some really hurtful things, and it was really hard. So I did what I knew how to do. I ran from God. I ran from Celebrate Recovery. And I started to bury that pain all over again. Now, during this time, Jared and I would seldom fight. We had put all of our focus into our kids, and he had gotten a new job, and we had gotten a new house, so we had put all the focus in that again. It seemed like every time we were doing good, we were focused on our children and putting them first. But then something bad happened, and I may get a little emotional here, because this is really close to my heart. But my grandmother, who I considered a second mom, she passed away, and I was really sad during this time. I was really depressed, and you see, there was a lot of regret and a lot of pain centered around her death. Me and Jared started to not really get along during this time, and there were some things that happened. And however, though, being in Celebrate Recovery before my grandmother passed away, I think really stopped me from spiraling out of control really fast. I would only drink and do drugs on the weekend. So I was still staying in control. If that makes any sense. I know it doesn't, but I remember convincing myself during this time that, I was just too messed up. I couldn't turn to God. I was too far gone. There was no way that he could ever want me. And I remember just saying all these things to myself. And I did what I did best during this time. I buried it all. But I want to remind you tonight that God, you don't have to fix yourself before you come to God. If you're out there and you're thinking these things that, you're too far gone, you're too messed up, the beautiful thing about God is he meets you right where you are. And he fixes you. You don't do that. You can't fix yourself. God has to do that. So as time moved on, me and Jared realized that we had a lot of problems. And no matter how no matter how bad we wanted to fix it, we just couldn't. We couldn't fix it on our own. I knew that Jared was serious about making our relationship work because he was the one that found a good Christian counselor for us to go to. It showed me how much he really did love me and how much he cared about how much, he wanted to make things work. And so I wanted him to work too, but I didn't know how they were going to. We were really at a point in our relationship where, it was somebody's packing bags and leaving, or we're going to make it work. That was our options. And so we went to this Christian counselor, and he did something really strange and kind of weird to me because, I was still really mad at God, and I didn't really want anything to do with God or church. And so he prayed over us. Well, first he had us pray over each other. And that was so very powerful. You see what he was doing there by making us pray over each other was planting a godly seed. And sometimes it takes a while for that seed to grow, but he really did plant a godly seed by making us pray for each other and then praying over us. And then he suggested that we go to church. Now, see, I'm not totally convinced. In this part of my life, I still wasn't totally convinced that that God was going to be good for us, or that we could ever be good enough for God. And so I ended up, still agreeing to go to church, but only for my kids' sake. We had a lot of people telling us, including my mom, she would say, like, you really should take the kids to church. They need to know about Jesus. That's something that they need to be taught at an early age. And she just, and many other people had told us, you guys are not giving your kids a chance. You're just saying we're not going to believe in God, and that's not fair to them. So I said, you know what, I'll agree to go, but only for my kids. I wasn't even, I wasn't going to go for me. I was going to go for the kids. Time keeps moving though and we went to church a couple times and really, really liked our church. Jared's family attends Antioch Baptist Church at that time, and we really fell in love with this church. And every time we come in, we just felt so welcomed, and everybody loved us. And it was just amazing because the people here just wrap you up right where you are. They don't care where you've been or what you've been doing. They just care about your future with God. And that's an amazing testimony in itself. But time keeps moving in our lives, and one day I end up having a horrible accident with Riley in our new home. We have a large staircase, and I was holding her in my arms and fell down the steps with her. She suffered the brunt of all the injuries. She had to have her 2 front teeth removed. And, during this time, nobody really knew what was going on with me mentally. I was like literally blaming myself for the fall and just saying things like, I should have caught her. I shouldn't have been on the steps with my socks. I should have been paying attention. And then I just went into this whole thing that I was just this terrible mom, and I believed it with all of my heart. Just this one little thought come into my mind, and I just believed it. And I just really focused, that I was a terrible mom and there was no going back. That's just who I was. And I had kind of, just given up on anything. And during this, though, I bruised the entire left side of my body. And if I'm going to be honest with all of you all, I milked it for all that it was worth. I really did. The pain, yes, I was in pain, but it wasn't as bad as I put on that it was. And so I immediately, a couple days after the fall, went to the doctor, immediately got a script, and it was easy. And I took the easy way out. I had all these thoughts and scenarios going through my mind, and it was evil, and it was a really, really dark time for me. And it wasn't long that I was drowning in addiction again. I made excuses like normal moms take pills. That's just what we do to get through and to get, moms have a lot to do. And especially when you have multiple children and they're all pulling you in different directions, we have a lot to do. And so I made, it was a perfectly good excuse. I thought that normal moms take pills. It's just what we do. During this time, I lied a lot. And I hurt a lot of people. And I'm going to share with you tonight something that I haven't shared in my testimony ever before. When me and Jared were going into counseling and we were doing the counseling, we got help for that. And, right after we had finished with our last session of counseling, Jared proposed to me. And that was in June, and we were supposed to be married in April. And Jared caught me that February with some medicine, with some pills. And he called the whole wedding off and said if I didn't get help and get the help that I needed, that he was going to leave and take the kids with him. This was my rock bottom. I felt the world caved in on me, and I just felt and said to myself, I can't do this. I can't lose my kids. I cannot lose them, and I cannot lose Jared. And so I immediately put myself into a survival mode, and I said, you know what? I'm finally going to be forced to peel back many layers of pain and suffering. And I'm happy to tell you that that was 4 years ago. I started attending, I knew about Celebrate Recovery, and I got myself into a program really quick. And I started going to Celebrate Recovery at New Life Baptist Church in Louisa County, Virginia. I went there every Friday night for about a year. It wasn't long after that me and my whole family started to attend Antioch Church on a regular basis. And I want to talk to you for a minute about one of the very first sermons that Dave preached, that I can remember him preaching here at Antioch. It was called The Living Word and the Chosen People. He talked about separating yourself from sin. And if something is keeping you from God, then you better get rid of it. He also talked, about, just, the whole message was centered on getting right with God. And, you should really separate yourself from sin. And just, this message was so powerful. So at the end of the message, he had this thing on the screen that said baggage check. And he asked, what baggage did you walk in here with today? And he started to pick up all these different bags. And it was a lot of different bags. And, each bag represented a different problem. He started picking up bags, and he picked up a bag for addiction, for alcoholism, loss of a loved one, divorce. He picked up all these different bags, and eventually he could barely walk. And he looked really weighed down. I was literally sitting in my chair watching my life unfold in front of me. And I just kept thinking, I have all them bags. Every one of them, I have them. I have each one of these bags that he picked up. And so he began to quote scriptures about the different problems. And one by one, those bags began to fall off. One of those scriptures really stood out to me. It is my favorite verse in the whole Bible. And it is my life's verse. And I'm going to read you a little more than just the one verse. I'm going to read John 8. It's John chapter 8, verses 31 through 36. Jesus said to the people who believed in him, You are truly my disciples if you remain faithful to my teachings, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. But we are descendants of Abraham. They said, We have never been slaves to anyone. What do you mean you will be set free? Jesus replied, I tell you the truth. Everyone who sins is a slave of sin. A slave is not a permanent member of the family. But a son is part of the family forever. So if the Son sets you free, you are free indeed. I love this verse. I was bound up by sin for many, many years, and I carried a lot of baggage. Dave didn't know the baggage that I walked in there with that day, but God knew, and God showed up right when I needed him to. When Dave gave the altar call that day, I took myself, who could barely walk with all of her bags, to the altar, and one by one they began to fall. I began true recovery and a really long journey that day. I continued with Celebrate Recovery and church regularly. I had this amazing support group. I had an awesome sponsor, and I also had an accountability partner. God gave me great Christian friends and great tools to become 4 years sober. On July 27th of 2018, I got to marry the man of my dreams. And now I know that our marriage isn't perfect. But I thank the Lord for giving me Jared and making him a man that showed me how to be, he showed me what real forgiveness looks like. He showed me that men are supposed to keep women safe. And he just really takes care of us, and it's a blessing. I'm proud to say that my family are all now members of Antioch Baptist Church. My kids are in the youth group here, and my oldest son has been saved and baptized. And this past year, my 2 daughters were saved and baptized. During my 4 years of sobriety, I became pregnant with a 4th child. Holy moly. His name is Weston, and he was right much of a miracle from the get-go. But God surrounded us and protected us, and he is now a beautiful, healthy baby. And the way I see it, I have 3 kids that have all accepted the Lord as their Savior, and I've got 1 more to go. So y'all keep praying for me. Also, March 8th of 2020 of this year, I was sitting in another powerful message. I find myself sitting in more and more as time moves on and I grow my relationship with the Lord. I find each message a little more powerful than the next. But this message on March 8th was very surprising to me and to others too. So I got in the car to come to church that morning. Tire was flat. I pumped the air, I put air in it, and I said, Lord, just let me make it to the church. I made it to the church. Weston was really cranky that morning and just a handful, so Clay ended up taking him to children's church for me, which was the blessing. And then I'm sitting in the message. Dave is preaching a message about not taking communion unless you are completely right with God. And I had really been praying for a long time about being rebaptized because I didn't feel like that I knew exactly what it meant growing up. And I just really wanted to be rebaptized, but was kind of like on the brink about it. And that morning, I thought, oh, well, they're going to take communion today. So I'm not going to do communion because I'm going to wait and I'm going to ask Dave after the message. I'm going to ask Dave if he will baptize me. So at the end of the message, he says, we're not doing communion today. We're doing baptisms. So needless to say, God shows up, right? I keep telling you that God shows up. Here he is. So I got baptized that morning. Something just came over me and I just said, you know what? Today is the day and I got to do this. No more excuses. And so I was baptized on March 8th of 2020. I gave my testimony for the very first time in February of 2019. I have since given my testimony over 35 times. I also get to help serve the Lord with Celebrate Recovery here at Antioch Baptist Church. This is an amazing program that saves many, many lives. And we are so blessed to offer this program, to be able to offer this program at Antioch. I also was blessed. God also blessed me with another opportunity this year. The second time that I give my testimony, a lady came to hear me speak. Her name is Laura Davis. She is a director with the Women's Missionary Union of Virginia. And she asked if I would become part of the Hope team. And after much prayer, I decided to take a leap of faith and do that. And so I am now a member of the Hope team, and I get to partner with a lovely lady, and we call each other the Dynamic Duo. We get to go around to many different churches, and we raise awareness about addiction, and that with God's help, you can recover and you can be set free. My ultimate mission in all ministries is to keep sharing what amazing things God has done in my life. I want to bring hope to the hopeless, and I want to ultimately help grow the kingdom of heaven. God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. God will always show up. You better believe it. If you all don't take anything else from my testimony, I want you to take this. God is here. He is alive, and He loves you right where you are. With that being said, I'm going to wrap things up. I want to thank everyone for watching tonight and for all the hearts. I keep seeing them, and it makes me happy to see all the hearts. One of the things that has really helped me in my recovery is scripture and prayer, and just having a lovely church family to come to and to fellowship with, and it's just really been a blessing. And I just wanted to come on here and share my testimony with you. And sharing your testimony is really hard. And I always say that if by sharing my testimony I can help one person, then it is worth it. If I can help reach one person, then it is worth it. And so, I keep sharing my testimony all over the place, and that is my passion, and I think that's what God has called me to do. And now, are you guys ready for this? I want to challenge some other people. So here it goes. Are you guys listening? I want to challenge Miss Judy Carter. And I want to challenge, are you ready for this? I want to challenge Judy Carter. I also want to challenge Aaron Lamonte again, because I cannot find your testimony anywhere on Facebook, and I feel like it's been removed. So I want to challenge you again to share it, and to share it on the church page, so that way we can all see it again. And I also want to challenge, I have one more. Y'all thought I was done, didn't you? I got you. So I also want to challenge Denise Vogt. So there's all my 3 challenges. Judy Carter, Denise Vogt, and Aaron Lamonte. I want to hear your testimony. Thank you all for letting me share. I love you very much, and I miss all of you, and my prayer is that everyone is healthy and safe. You all have a blessed night. Bye.